All right, good evening, everyone. We will get started here. It is December the 4th. This is our first meeting in the month of December for the North College Hills City Council. So we will start, as we always do, by standing. We will do our prayer and then call our Pledge of Allegiance. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this Council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all the members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best we can with your help and guidance. We pray this in your name. Amen. Amen. Call this meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome everyone. If anyone does wish to address council tonight, we do ask that you sign in over here at the table with our clerk. And we will get started. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Dukestein, Ms. DeWald.
Here.
Ms. Underwood, Ms. Alexander, Ms. Zorb,
Here.
Ms. Blythe,
Here.
Ms. Brunner.
Here.
Thank you. I did receive notification from Ms. Dukestein, from Ms. Underwood, and from Ms. Alexander that they would be unable to attend tonight.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I would like to make a motion to excuse Ms. Dukestein, Ms. Underwood, and Ms. Alexander.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion on the floor by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald to excuse Ms. Dukestein, Ms. Underwood, and Ms. Alexander from tonight's meeting. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. DeWald,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. We do have tonight's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald to adopt tonight's agenda as presented. Any discussion?
Mr. President.
Ms. Blythe?
When we get to legislation, we'll do it later.
That's okay, never mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. DeWald,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. We have the minutes from the council meeting that we conducted on November 20th.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from 11/20/2023.
We have a motion from Ms. Zorb to accept the 11/20/2023 minutes. Need a second?
Mr. President, I
Ms.
second.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. Blythe to accept the 11/20/2023 minutes. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. DeWald,
Abstain.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Motion passed 3-1. No,
No, it
that's
doesn't.
before.
Before.
You don't have to abstain from it. If you want to, you can.
Well, I realize that, but I didn't watch the video. Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
If you can go back.
would it be council's pleasure if I just went ahead and voted
Yeah, it's
yes? It
failed.
really makes no difference to me.
I would be fine with it. Is there anyone on council that would have a problem with Ms. DeWald voting for this? As she was not at the meeting.
Mr. President, I don't believe you can go back.
Oh, we can't go back.
I was just going to ask if
Okay.
we can go back.
That's an excellent point, thank you. All right, so we will have this on the agenda at the next meeting. Okay, next up is communication, Mr. Hedger.
Thank you, Mr. President. From communication, I have the Ethics Commission from the State of Ohio for your 2023 filing is due by Friday, December 8th. I will make a copy for everyone's inbox and mail it out as well.
What was that date again, sir?
Friday, December 8th.
Is that all?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I'm confused by that. Didn't we already do one for 2023? Is that just for,
It's to confirm mailing addresses with everyone. Is accurate. And it says the filing for candidates.
is there a link that we need?
Yeah, I'll provide you a link.
Oh,
to
you'll
everyone.
forward, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Are you good there, Ms. Zorb?
I'm confused, but I'll say yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, if that is all communication, next we do have a special speaker for tonight. Dr. Berkeley is here with us, and with that, I will turn it over. Please take the, well, you're going to introduce?
Yes. Sorry.
That's
we
all
didn't
right.
put that there, but
Go
you
ahead.
guys all know me, Lieutenant Cheney, North College Hill Police. So we asked Dr. Berkeley to come to kind of give you guys a picture of what police and fire go through on a daily basis with critical incidents or just the daily grind of the job and what it could do to us. I'll give you a kind of particular background for myself. 2 Augusts ago, we had a real critical incident in Mount Healthy that myself and 2 of our other officers responded to. Unfortunately, a child died, and it was traumatic for all of us. And then to kind of come full circle, Saturday, we were at a standoff in Mount Healthy with a barricaded subject in the house, and he had a 1-year-old child in the house as well. 4 of us who were at that scene 2 Augusts ago were there Saturday. So go forward to the next day, and we all get together, do a debrief, and to a person, we all look at each other and say, hey, did this bring anything back for you? And to every single one of us, yes. Flashbacks of that day 2 years ago. After that incident, I started getting involved with officer wellness. We went to a debriefing. I became a officer wellness person, so if a critical incident happens, they will call me. If I'm available, I go out, speak to officers, firemen, whatever. So in October, I went to a training with my wife, and Dr. Berkeley was there. I've met her several times. She's come and helped us, and she was at this training. City Council and some other people from Cincinnati were at this training, so I approached her and said, hey, look, would you be willing to come speak to our council and other people in the audience just to give more of a background than I can so you guys understand what we go through on a day-to-day basis and what happens with us with critical incidents and just everyday call volume. So I can only speak for myself, but she can speak to it, so I'll let Dr. Berkeley talk now.
Thank you, Lieutenant Cheney.
All right, so Mr. President, Madam Mayor, members of the board, Lieutenant Cheney, thank you so much for the invitation to come out tonight. I'm really grateful for your time. I am a psychologist, so I don't prescribe, and my field area of expertise is mostly trauma and working with first responders specifically. So police, fire, but also dispatch and our healthcare first responders. And so having the pleasure of working with your agencies in particular, right, just like the other agencies in our region, it struck me as a doc at the University of Cincinnati in the Department of Psychiatry that for every maybe 10, 15 firefighters I would see in my office that were having difficulty following a run or cumulative trauma, I'd maybe see one police officer. Usually they were 20, 30, 40 years into their career, or they were mandated to come see me. By that time that they presented to me, usually their whole life was on fire, right? All the wheels were off the bus. And they sometimes needed an extensive amount of care and treatment as well. And so I felt a calling, really faith-based as well, just listening to God and what he was asking me to do. And we can't really wait for our first responders to come to us in our clinics. We have got to go to them. And so got out of my office, started doing ride time during the pandemic, specialized training, and then being part of peer response teams. It's an honor and a privilege. It's almost all pro bono work of going out and after critical incidents and meeting with the departments, assessing the need, normalizing symptoms, but providing a lot of education to our first responders on what are the signs and symptoms, what are they likely to notice when something is wrong, right? When they're taking that back to their family. Number one sign, symptoms of cumulative trauma exposure in a way that's now manifested and they're stuck in recovery is increased irritability and acting on it, right? And so vast majority of the time, those first responders are professionals. They have a uniform. That uniform even has a suppressive effect. So they'll stay very professional and a command presence on the job. And that anger builds behind there, as well as horror with what they've seen, grief that goes unprocessed, especially among our men, right? And it builds, and it eventually does what, right? It's going to explode, and who's it going to explode on?
Right.
Their family, their kids, their loved one, their neighbors in the community, right? And oftentimes we're going to see that externalizing pattern and say, that's problematic, or maybe it's popping up at work a little bit and they're snappy, or they might get a write-up or two. And sometimes that's warranted, right? And everybody's responsible for their behavior. And also, we are way behind the times in terms of, when most people think about trauma or PTSD, you think of what or who? What population?
Oh, military.
Military and veterans, right? And by nature of just serving, even in a non-combat zone, so if you're deployed, right, there's really not such a difference anymore with what is and what is not a combat zone. Truck drivers are hitting IEDs, right? And so the VA has also established the Veterans Benefit Association, Veterans Health Association to rehab our military service members. That as community members, myself, I'm a civilian, my husband's a civilian, right? I took for granted for a long time that our first responders are the ones on the front lines. And not only are they asked to enforce the law, keep us safe, and also rescue us, right? And our families in our time of need, but we're asking them to be exposed to the worst of the worst, right? So innocent deaths, gruesome scenes, even cleaning up the scene. I will tell you some of what haunts my officers the most is listening to the agony of the family members on scene. Oftentimes these officers, paramedics, right, they're accompanying the family members to the hospital, and they'll say, I close my mind at night and I can't get that screaming mom's agony out of my head, right? It's torturous. And then they have their own kids, their own families, and our brain naturally, even though we don't want it to, will often picture someone or a child we're close to in their shoes, right? And so we're asking them to be exposed to cumulative trauma. And we know in terms of our brain-based research, the more of trauma, just the higher number of trauma or incidents that anybody's exposed to, the more likely their brain's going to get stuck along the way in recovery. So our brain's designed to be resilient and reset. Our children, our kids are resilient. Thank goodness for that, because there's more violence we're observing among youth than we ever have, right? However, most police officers, just looking at that group in particular, if they make criteria for a PTSD diagnosis, it's based on cumulative trauma, not one particular incident. And oftentimes incidents will build, like Lieutenant Cheney mentioned, and you'll have them remind, one incident will remind you of the next, remind you of the next. So percentage-wise rates, what are we talking about? So in a community this size with this run and call volume and the severity of calls that we've seen just over the past couple years, we're looking at anywhere between mid-20s to about 35%. So that's as high as 1 in 3 officers are having a diagnosable medical condition like PTSD. Those rates are just as high for depression. That's even a little bit higher for men. And then on top of it, with the shift schedules that our officers work and our firefighter paramedics. So firefighter paramedics, right, they live at the station, usually 24 on, 48 off. And so their sleep schedule is usually interrupted at least a few times a night. We know, and then for officers, if they're working third shift, similar thing, or we were never designed to work that. And then if they're working overtime on top, right, they're losing or missing several sleep cycles. We know that for men, chronic sleep deprivation ages testosterone levels by 10 years. Why does that matter, right? Because that's a key hormone for men. So we also see hardening of arteries. We see higher rates of cardiac arrest, stroke, and heart attack. And you could probably think of, right, people in the field, I know Lieutenant can, who are fit, who are young, who are having those cardiac issues. And that is stress. So it's direct relation, right? We got sleep deprivation, we've got trauma exposure. And so thinking about in the fire service, I often make a metaphor. I do quite a bit of training, right, to equip these members in the front end and then to keep that training maintained so they can see the signs, they can know where to get help, go to a clinician that knows how to treat it. With the fire, right, they have equipment, gear on, right? And that gear, I kind of ballparked it with specifically with your fire chief at North College Hill, and he said anywhere between like $5,000 and $7,000 per firefighter paramedic for all their gear, their uniform, their turnout, their oxygen tank, and that gear, right? Why do they have all that gear? And a lot of it's protective. Protective against what? Fire, and also what's a high risk of exposure to smoke? Cancer. So cancer rates are astronomical among firefighters and also among police because they're often on scene at inhaling that secondary smoke. And we know that that is a risk factor that our personnel choose to take on. That they know that by choosing a career in the fire service, they likely have, they have higher rates of cancer. And that now IAFF, the International Organization for Firefighters, has suggested and even put out as many mandates as they can for preventative cancer screenings, right? And once a year and throughout the whole department to get ahead of it. Because if we can catch it early, it's better prognosis. And so firefighters, do they ever wear their turnout gear in the kitchen when they're cooking meals? Do they wear it home to their family, take it into their homes? No. Why? Because it's contaminated, right? And they literally would be exposing their infant to carcinogens if they wore that home. I want you to think about that as a metaphor for the emotional, psychological, spiritual trauma that they walk around with, right? So it impacts them. It has to. They're absorbing that. They're contaminated by that, even multiple times in one shift, right? They don't get to choose what that day looks like. They're just going to respond to your community's needs. And so they have all that emotional contaminant on them. Are they going to necessarily know that they need to rinse that off, right? Deal with that? No, they take it home. They take it into your community. They suffer with it, and they usually suffer with it for years or decades. And so I really felt led to help our first responders increase their awareness. Some of that's through training, getting ahead of this. Some of that's through the International Association for Chiefs of Police, the fire equivalent International Association. Both have said we need wellness visits and checks annually for our first responder personnel. So it's very similar to cancer screenings. So there's no assumption anything's wrong. It's private and confidential. And if it's mandatory, everybody does it. So everybody meets with the doc, right? I camp out in an office in their police station, and everybody gets a handout on how to relieve stress, our best practices for sleep, which good news is not medication, it's behavior-based, and also what to notice if you need help. And then a whole list of resources, the peer support teams that Lieutenant was talking about, but also a list of vetted clinicians. So everybody gets that information and your people stay well and they know how to access it. Departments where we've rolled this out, so another police department not too far from you all, then 20-mile radius, did these mandatory wellness visits. Guess what percentage was enthusiastic about it? These are police officers. Yeah, probably in the negative, if that could be a thing. I even polled them, and you'll see some of the data in that folder is actually from a dispatch center. And I asked them, how helpful do you think this is going to be? And even 911 dispatchers and the officers said, probably not very much, or maybe somewhat. And then when I polled them afterward, they all said either it was very helpful or extremely helpful. So those wellness visits are also tailored. Imagine if you had an hour to ask your primary care doc anything that you wanted to know, right? And you had that much protected time, and they could give you focused medical feedback. That's what the wellness visit is. So I asked them about stress, I asked them about coping, I asked them about managing. They don't have to talk to me. And then they all get those resources. And in some of those wellness visits, we are unpacking trauma content. And I'm indicating that they, in my medical opinion, they need to be referred to a clinician. And I give them a list of clinicians and say, you don't have to see me if you don't want to by any means. Here's a whole list. I just want to get help. And then in other wellness visits, we're talking about their kid who's struggling with ADHD and school behaviors and acting out. For some, we're talking about their marriage, the temperature of that, how they're doing. I'm giving them resources for couples retreats for first responders. So it's really a wellness visit, a whole wraparound service. It's just like maintaining that gear, right? So as a city, you pay to maintain their gear, their weaponry, their vest, right? We talked maybe equipping the average police officer is about $5,000. What we overlook so often, and what I overlook for so long, right, is the person inside all that gear. Is we gotta have to invest and maintain that person, because they're a huge investment, as you know, right? So also cost-wise, it costs a tremendous amount of time. We talked about coming from multiple salaries to hire and train a new officer, even if it's a lateral with experience on. And in this field, what we're noticing all of a sudden a couple of years ago, not as many people by a long shot are applying to be a police officer, firefighter, paramedic, right? Mm-hmm. So I also do pre-employment testing, and agencies 4 or 5 years ago would get 200, 300, 400 applicants per position. Now guess how many they're getting?
Yeah.
4. 2.
Wow.
Yeah. And so thinking about, we're investing in that hire, right, in that person. We want to maintain their health and well-being. And so also good data to show that when we take care of their wellness and we keep them healthy, that recruitment goes up, because our young people, our younger generations are much more well-educated and will ask about wellness programs and will ask about mental health. And then also retention, right? So there's so many officers. We're losing more officers, whether they're on the fire or the police side right now, to early retirement. And then that's when I see them for treatment, right? Versus how can we keep them healthy? And that's a community investment. That's the person you want showing up at your house because they're a veteran to take care of your family. Let's keep them healthy and engaged so that they want to serve longer, right? So it makes sense from that standpoint too. I wanted to talk about the family here for a second. So probably no surprise to you guys. I started this work doing couple therapy for vets with PTSD and their spouse or their partner. And the number one protective factor against developing something like PTSD is positive perceived social support. So it's asking for what you need specifically, help-wise, and then you, not only do you have to ask for it, which is a tall order for first responders, because most of us just want to help everybody to our detriment. Am I right? And then you have to tell the person specifically what you need. Right? And so the relationship, whether it's a marriage or a partnership, it serves a very strong protective factor. So that's your support at home. It also turns out is the number one protective factor against suicide. So suicide it's heartbreaking, and every year we are losing more of our first responders to suicide than in the line of duty. In the greater Cincinnati area, let's combine police and fire, just in the Hamilton County region, we've lost 5 that I know of, just this year. And so our people are suffering, and because of the nature of them being first responders, also just larger male populations, right? But this affects our women too, and has in our region. So many of them are suffering in silence, and they don't need to. So getting out ahead, having them meet clinicians, having them interact with peer support on the back of critical incidents, making that the norm now, encourages them to get help, encourages brave moments like Lieutenant sharing how he and the other officers were impacted. And that those relationships that are formed are protective. And so actually, what we find in terms of suicide prevention among first responders is we want to actually give training to the couple. So we want to improve the couple's ability to communicate, share emotions, solve conflicts, protect against irritability coming in, even giving them parenting skills, because if we can fortify the home, our officer is now fortified. And the cool thing about that is that the cost investment's pretty low, right? So I put in there some estimates for my training. I have a list of clinicians that do these services too that are phenomenal in the area that work with first responders. And a couple hours worth of couple skills training makes a world of difference in terms of mental health and wellness. Then you also have who is going to notice first if the first responder is struggling, they're not themselves, they're irritable, they're isolating? The spouse, right? But that can also be a pretty isolated place. They might be walking on eggshells. They might not want to upset their person. They might not know how to start that conversation. They might have gotten shut down in the past, right? So when we bring the couple together and we just do real talk on these issues, have them turn toward each other every couple minutes and practice those skills, it gets them on the same page. It unites them. Now they're a team, right? And they're going to protect against things like PTSD and depression, but then they're also going to deploy skills to treat it. It's phenomenal to watch. And then the family flourishes, right, as well as the kiddos. In terms of one more thing that I wanted to mention, and then if you have any questions, if that's okay, thank you, Mr. President, so I had a officer that I worked with within our broader Cincinnati community, right? And this officer, it's a scary number. So it's 60 to 70% of law enforcement officers, to get real for a second, not meaning to upset anyone. If anyone reacts to it, I'm a clinician. I'm happy to chat with you after. Pull me aside. But more than half of police officers have seriously contemplated suicide. About as high as a fourth, this is super underreported, have put their service weapon in their mouth. Okay? Will you ever hear about it? Probably not, right? Until or unless something happens. And typically, if or when something happens, people will say, I would have never expected that officer, that person. They are incredibly skilled at looking like they have everything under control because that's their job, right? And they will lock it down. And underneath, they can be in a lot of pain. So this officer, that was the case for them. The world became black and white. They couldn't feel any emotion anymore. They were on marriage number 3. They got a citizen's complaint for a citizen that they don't even remember interacting with. So the sergeant calls them in and says, I need to talk to you about a complaint. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they said, this lady said you intimidated her at Kroger. And he was like, I don't remember interacting with her. And he said, she said you didn't say anything. It was just how you looked. Oh. Just his resting demeanor. He was in so much internal pain that it was coming out, and the citizens could see it and feel it, right? This person was still high functioning at work, right? Really good at their job, didn't need to be medically released from it, but needed immediate treatment, right? And got it. And that's the message of hope I want to leave you with. So treatment conditions like PTSD, We used to think that was a life sentence or a death sentence, right? And it is incredibly treatable. So on average, number of sessions, if somebody needs clinical treatment with me, is outpatient in my office, 1 hour a week. And how many sessions do you think, would you guess, total number? 12. Around 6 to 12. Some of our treatments are as little as 3.
Wow.
And then if they respond to treatment, which most do, and if they don't respond to one, we switch them to another quickly. If they respond to treatment, they will always respond to treatment. We give boosters, like a booster shot, if or when they need it. Once they respond to treatment, their brain actually rewires in a way that they're better able to cope with everyday stress. So their brain has actually become stronger, better able to manage and respond to stress on the job, right? They're a higher functioning first responder for your community after they go through treatment. I think that's hard to say about most things. You think about a knee injury, it takes people completely out for 6 months or so? And then they're probably not going to be at the same level of functioning. PTSD actually equips them to be stronger. So it is a tremendous privilege to be able to watch that happen. That officer that I was talking about, just like Lieutenant, is now involved in peer support. That's usually what happens. They become very passionate. They want their brothers and sisters to know that there is hope, there is healing, and how to get it and where to get it, and become kind of on fire about it, which is phenomenal to see. That individual takes pictures of sunsets and posts them now. He told his wife, he said, have there always been sunsets out here on our property? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it happens every day, right? And he was like, he never saw it. So he was just head down in the job, in his own mind, suffering, and never saw the light, right? Literally. And so he is so grateful and thankful to be able to do so every day now. So I'm on fire, passionate about this, and our first responders, they deserve so much from us. They give so much. They see things that they can never erase, and they will take that burden day after day for us, and even die for us, right? And I think we owe it to them to show up and give them what they need to stay healthy and for their families to stay healthy. So that's my main message. Thank you so much for caring for them and letting me speak.
Thank you, Dr. Berkeley. Do we have any questions?
Mr. President, I
Ms.
do have
Ord,
one.
go ahead.
And thank you so much for coming here. I personally have a couple of first responders in my family, so I appreciate this.
Take your time.
Go on. Sorry. I was just going to ask, these rates, I'm going to really try to get it out. I see your rates here. Do you accept insurance also, or is this like cash basis? How does this even, and I'm sorry if I'm getting way too detailed for this presentation.
Not at all. Yeah, so the services to the agency, like the wellness visit costs or the training costs, I put that they're cost estimates. So I know cities have set budgets, right? And I work with you to give you the service. So other cities, I discount services. I do it within the budget. I'm passionate about it. I just want your people to get the service. And then clinically, I'm in private practice. So I'm private pay. I take HSA or FSA, and then I'm partnering with multiple grant-funded agencies and nonprofits to cover the cost of treatment. And that's mostly because I'm a solo practice, so I'm looking for an admin, if any of you know a good one. I'm not going to poach by any means. And then there's a number of clinicians. We have a whole list that some of the peer support teams, like the Tri-State team, have vetted. So they interview us for an hour and make sure we give evidence-based treatment. We know first responders. We do ride-alongs. We work with them. We care about them. And then it lists who's in network for insurance, even where they're located. Like there are clinicians that are closer to you all than like I'm going to be out in Anderson. So yes, it's a great question. And
Thank you. If I can answer some of that too. With our city and the insurance, the P that we belong to
oh, thank you.
through the city of Cincinnati is phenomenal. They actually have clinicians that are just for police and fire. I mean, I'll be open and honest because I'm passionate about it. I see somebody, he's phenomenal. Like I told Dr. Berkeley before, sometimes when I go, we don't talk about the job, we don't talk about anything, we talk about sports, family, what is just going on daily stuff, and sometimes just that hour of camaraderie with him, and I leave, and I'm like, so we have that, and it's 25 visits, and, for free.
Wow.
So, I mean, that is one phenomenal thing the city provides, being a part of that.
Yep.
And it's kind of unlimited, because you can go for PTSD, and then if you have something else happen, they will reverse it and you start over. So, personally, I thank the city for that, because it's something you guys do provide, and it's phenomenal, so.
That's good to hear. I didn't want the monetary part of it to be prohibited from someone seeking help, and that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I feel the same way. Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions?
Ms. Berkeley,
Yes, please.
I commend you on what you do because mental health is very important. I have a question about protocol. For instance, one of my coworkers is an officer and he's edgy and I see certain signs. How would I approach this problem to get him help, or do I call you first and you come? Well, I don't think it go that way, but what is the protocol for that?
Sure, it's a great question. And ideally, there's multiple avenues because some police officers are going to have a prefer PEEP, and they just need to get that number from you, and that's where they want to go. Others, trust is a huge thing among first responders, right? And it's hard earned as it should be. And so we want to go with what they're comfortable with. They also usually have a very intense fear of having their gun taken or being like pulled off service or off duty. PTSD is my area of expertise. It's my fellowship training at the VA. 95% of your first responders are high functioning, healthy on the job. They don't need any kind of release. The ones that do are usually requiring hospitalization, a much higher level of care. And so I will make my cards, I'll pass those around. I consult all the time, so I don't charge for that. We'll just chat, and I'll say, you tell me what's going on. The peer support teams do the same thing. We're a bridge, so we'll give you options and help you connect. You might be the best person to talk that officer into taking that leap of faith to do that, or maybe they want to talk to a fellow police officer who's been there, who can encourage them. And then depending on the department, some departments will cover cost, like for a clinician like me out of network, and say we'll cover 3 visits as a check-in, or we'll cover a wellness visit, or almost like a triage visit where I would meet with them, get more information, and then do a handoff to the appropriate person. So it's very flexible. And ideally, I think we want to have a couple options on board that everybody is aware of, and it's worked out, and it's posted, and it's widespread. Great question. Thank you.
Some of that too I can answer. So unfortunately, Hamilton County, there's only 2 real large agencies, City of Cincinnati and Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, where they have dedicated people that's all their job is officer wellness. I'm the wellness coordinator for our agency, but we're small, 17 people, plus I'm a supervisor. What we are finding, we had a call last week with tri-state peer support people, is the smaller agencies, our struggle is to get officers to come forward and say, hey, look, I think I need some help. Because we're so small, they don't want everybody to know their business.
Right.
So that's,
Exactly.
our goal is the peer support group is for 2024, how can we fix this? We don't have an answer yet, but that's like one of the main goals for next year is how to fix it for small agencies to make sure that officers are comfortable going. Like, City of Cincinnati has somebody that can just go to her office and it's away from everybody else and they can just talk behind closed doors and no one even knows. If someone comes in my office, they know. You can see them walk out. They may not necessarily know what they're there for, but it's,
The possibility.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle.
And that can be a rationale for wellness visits. And the mandatory one, sometimes it doesn't go over like complete like gravy with the unions, of course, because then they're concerned, will that psychologist ever do a fitness for duty? And that is a conflict of interest. So once I'm in a clinician role in any way, shape, or form, or even training or critical incident call out for a city, and I've already done that for you all, I can never do fitness for duty for you all. And the mandatory wellness visits, then I'm screening everybody. So that officer would see me and get triage, but so would 5 others that maybe are suffering in silence. So it's just a wider, everybody kind of gets checked in on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, Dr. Berkeley, thank you very much. Great presentation. We do appreciate Lieutenant Cheney and all of our police and fire here in North College Hill, obviously, so do appreciate the service you're providing to our fearless frontline. Thank you. I feel like we should just end with that. But we can't, so we will turn over to council committees, starting with City Community Development and Recreation.
We have not had a meeting. Our next meeting is December 11th.
Thank you. At 6:30, right?
6:30 p.m., yes.
Okay. Budget and Finance, Ms. Dukes-Dean is not here. But Ms. Orb, would you like to?
I'll just
Please.
say that we have not met yet this month. The 11th at 7:30 will be our first meeting this month.
Thank you.
Yep.
Then we have Rules and Public Policy and Public Safety. Ms. Underwood is not here, but I do believe we did not have meetings last month, correct?
We did, our last meetings were canceled.
Yes. So if I'm looking at the calendar, the next meeting date would be just Tuesday, the 26th. I believe that would be, it's not Monday, the 25th, so.
Yes, I would agree with that.
That would be Rules and Public Policy at 6:30 and Public Safety at 7:30. All right, we'll move on to ad hoc reports. Does anyone have an ad hoc report this evening? Hearing none, we'll move into the administrative reports. Good evening, Madam Mayor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank Dr. Berkeley. I know her and Lieutenant Cheney are having a conversation, but awesome information. I really I appreciate you and that dedication. I know sometimes you probably have to get away by yourself. I'm sure. But thank you for what you do. You don't think about it until you hear about it, and then you think about the people that are close to you who are in those positions. So thank you. And especially for the information. I'm over here like taking down notes, asking Ms. Iki like questions, because we need that. Not just for them, but for anybody, everybody. I think everybody needs to talk to somebody at some point in time. So thank you. And then I wanted to thank everybody for coming out to the Christmas tree lighting if you were there. And to thank our Santa. Santa almost forgot to show up, but
He's busy this time of
he's
year.
busy, that's right. Something said, send him a reminder, so I texted him, hey, Santa, and he said, oh, is that today? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does anyone have any questions for the mayor? We'll move on to the city administrator's report. Good evening, Ms. Iki.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple of things tonight. We have had an uptick in spam emails. Now, you may not see all of these because our protections are pretty good, but if you get email from someone you're not expecting with a link or an attachment, please do not open it. Please do not. It will wreak havoc on our network. And then we have to do a lot of work to fix that and then reset your password and all of the things that come with that. I don't know if it's the holiday season or what, but in the last two weeks, it's been a very, very dramatic uptick. So if some of those are escaping into your email and you think it looks a little strange, don't open it. You can send me the email. I'll send it to our IT folks to take a look at so that they can flag it, but just don't open it, especially just don't open it. You don't want all your stuff to go away.
Ms. Ziki,
Yes,
do we have a reporting button in our email? I've never paid attention.
we do not.
Okay.
I know some Outlook programs do, but I'm not sure that we have migrated to the most recent update.
Okay.
But again, if you see something and you think it might be okay, send it to me and I can have them look at it before you open it. So just a gentle reminder. That being said, a couple other things. I sent you all an email earlier this morning. Our senior center coordinator has put together an Adopt a Senior program for this year. I have the list, and she brought over the little Christmas tree with their names and what they're looking for, which is in my office. If you are interested in taking and adopting a senior this holiday season, I know they'd be very grateful. They are planning a holiday luncheon on December 20th at 11 o'clock. You are all invited. It will obviously be at the senior center. And if you are interested in participating, either see me because I have the list or take a tag off the tree in my office. There is a BZA meeting next Tuesday, December 12th at 6:30 for a hearing. I can send out the information. BZA typically only meets or has only met as necessary. We are looking in 2024 to get them a regular date on the calendar so that we can stick to probably the third Tuesday or Wednesday of the month. They're going to have some conversation next week and pick a date. But then that would be calendared in. And if we do not have somebody that has applied for any kind of zoning variance, those meetings would be canceled. But we can schedule these then out for the year, much like we do planning commission meetings and those sorts of things. So just trying to streamline things a little bit. And just a reminder, because the mayor slid me a note, the city Christmas party is next Friday night, the 15th at 7 o'clock at the senior center. And I know the committee is busy planning that. I think that is all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ziki. Anyone have any questions? All right, we'll move on to the law director's report. Mr. Dieters did give me notice he would be unable to attend this evening. And then we have the finance director's report, and the finance director is not here, so we'll move to call of members, starting with Ms. DeWald.
Thank you, I have nothing.
Ms. Zorb?
I think I have nothing either.
Thank you. Ms. Blythe?
This is funny. This past Saturday, I saw my neighbors, they were putting up Christmas lights, and I remembered, I said, oh, I promised myself I would put up outdoor lights, the weekend of Thanksgiving. And then Sunday morning, I woke up, and the first thing I thought was, I missed the Christmas tree lighting. So I was putting up outdoor lights around 5 o'clock, 5:30, and my brain just got engulfed in that, and then it remembered the next morning. So I'm sorry I missed the Christmas tree lighting, but I see the tree, and it's gorgeous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blythe. Ms. Brunner?
We sang for you.
I just want to say support small businesses in North College Hill. It's Christmas time. I know a lot of people probably don't have maybe what you would like to buy as a gift, but I'm sure a lot of these businesses might have gift cards. So support local businesses. And the Christmas tree lighting was really nice. I really enjoyed it. I didn't know Miss Javette Williams could sing like that. But it was really nice. It was really nice. And watch your surroundings during the holiday. And that's it. Have a good holiday.
Mr.
Thank you, Ms.
President.
Brunner. Ms. Ziki?
I apologize. I remembered one other thing. Our last leaf collection for the year is this Saturday, the 9th. So get your leaves out to the curb, brown paper bags. Rumpke will pick them up. It's our last one for the year, so if you don't do it now, you're on your own.
Mr.
Mulch them.
President, I'm sorry. Can I say something
Mrs. Nichols.
in regards to what Ms. Iki said? I would just remind, I do see sometimes if I'm riding around, people blowing their leaves down into the drains. I would ask that we don't do that because it stops them up. I've seen it quite a few. Maybe you don't do it intentionally, but when you blow them in the street, they end up down in the drain. So just, I don't know, get a bag or put them on the curb. Maybe we can look into some neighborhoods. They just like blow 'em, like where my parents live, you can just blow them to the end of the driveway or in the, and then they'll come by and pick them up. I don't know if that's something that they can offer us. That might be. You know, we want to just put them on the curb and have them suck them up and take them, you know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. All right, next up, we have remarks from the audience. Mr. Hedger, is anyone signed in?
No, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. That'll move us to legislation. When you're ready, Mr. Hedger.
Third reading resolution number 25, 2023, a resolution authorizing the city to execute a contract for the reconstruction of Dordain Lane and Loran Lane in the city of North College Hill and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
I would like to make a motion to change that resolution to remove the emergency clause. And I don't have the exact verbiage, so the exact legislation, so I don't know which number it is in the, does anyone have it to know? I mean, I know it's in the title, but there's probably also one of the whereases says
Probably
declare an
section
emergency.
3, without looking real quick.
Section 4.
Thank you. So to be more precise, I would like to remove the declaring an emergency in the title and in section 4.
Okay, so the motion from Ms. Zorb is to amend resolution number 25-2023 to remove the emergency clause from the title and from section 4 of the resolution.
Mr. President,
Ms. Brunner,
I make a motion to adopt as amended.
Hang on, we got to vote on that first.
I need a second to make the
Second.
amendment.
Okay.
Would you like to do
A
that?
second.
Thank you.
All right, motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. Brunner to amend resolution 25-2023, removing the emergency clause from the title and section 4. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I would just like to provide a little background to why I'm requesting this.
Perfect, thank you.
Because when it has that emergency clause, it takes 5 people, it takes 5 votes to make this ordinance, or excuse me, this resolution passed. We only have 4 members of council here tonight, so therefore it could not pass if we do not remove that.
Yes, thank you for adding that.
Sure.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Stoll,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Mr. President,
Ms. Brunner,
I make a motion to adopt as amended.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Brunner, second by Ms. Zorb to adopt resolution 25-2023 as amended. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Stoll,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. Next legislation when you're ready, Mr. Hedger.
Third reading, resolution number 26, 2023, a resolution to adopt the 2023 Hamilton County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 26 for 2023.
Mr. President,
Ms. Blythe?
I'll second that motion.
All right, motion on the floor to adopt Resolution 26, 2023, seconded by Ms. Blythe. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Mr. Wald,
Yes.
Ms. Orb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brenner.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. Next piece of legislation when you're ready, sir.
Second reading, resolution number 27, 2023, a resolution authorizing the city to execute a contract for reconstruction of Prospect Place in the city of North College Hill and declaring an emergency.
And next legislation when you're ready, Mr. Hedger.
First reading, ordinance number 16, 2023, an ordinance making appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North College Hill, Ohio, for the period beginning January 1st, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2024.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
Ms. Icky, is your intention for council to adopt the budget on a line item basis or a fund basis?
My preference would be a fund basis, which are the first two pages that serve kind of as an overview or a dashboard of the budget in its entirety. I tried to get it on one page, but it just didn't work. Because I had talked about providing you a one-page kind of summary. That's what that is. You have behind that, though, the line items, which have not changed since the budget presentation on October 23rd that are in the shared drive that you all have. So those numbers, the dashboard pages are reflective of what you've been looking at for the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever that is.
So basically, all the numbers rolled up.
Correct.
All right. So here's where I'm going with that. I noticed that in the under Department 701, under Mayor and Administration, there is a line item that has $12,000. It had $7,500 last year, or excuse me, this current year, and it has $12,000 for next year, and that is for. There's a little note out to the side that says it's for the newsletter. And I know that the newsletter does not get written, does not get published. So I would like to make a recommendation that we move that $12,000 into the printing and reproduction under legislation so that council can go ahead and be kind of an advocate or a leader in putting the newsletter together.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols.
to Ms. Orb, the money funds that are in there, this year we plan to do a newsletter. We've already met maybe 3 times between 2022 and 2023. We have another citizen who was actually on the board as well. So this year we plan to put out a newsletter.
So in 2024.
That was the intent earlier this year as well, but some other things fell behind with who we were using, who we wanted to use. One couldn't publish the way that we needed it published. So that is the intent.
So I guess what I'd really like to hear is more along the lines of a promise versus intent. Because our intent as council, our intent was to have that last year, and that's why we put $7,500 in there. So I would like to hear something more than intent for that $12,000 to stay in the mayor's budget.
When you say council put $7,000 in there last year, that was for one mailing. The 12 is for, I believe we said that it was going to be on a quarterly this year. Correct me, is that what we discussed? 3. Mm-hmm. So
Mr.
intent,
President.
promise, we're doing a newsletter this year. At least 2. At least 2. We plan to do 3. So.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Ms. DeWald?
I don't recall any conversations of you presenting a newsletter either last year, the year before,
I didn't have 'em.
or the future.
I didn't have those with council. But we did have meetings.
But we've discussed it at council, and nothing ever came out of you about
When-
what's going to happen for a newsletter.
When did we discuss it with council?
We've discussed it in committee meetings. We've discussed it at council meetings. If we had a newsletter that people would know was the whole problem.
Ms. DeWild, we did not discuss it at a council meeting. I've had, I know at least 3 meetings. And we had a team of people, 3 different people on 2 different ones.
Well, it's not my intent to disagree with you.
Okay. Mine either.
Saying that the proof is in the pudding, and we have not had a newsletter for your entire mayorship.
We haven't. No, we
And
didn't.
before that.
And so we
We've
did-
had money
we-
in the budget every year.
We've had
for it.
one, we did not have money in the budget for 2020.
At least
nor
$5,000.
2021. Right. I don't believe that this is the time to have that discussion. We can have it in another committee meeting if you'd like. But
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
or when we have another meeting, I would love to invite you.
I'd like to follow up on Ms. Zorb's motion, or whatever you want to call that, to move this to council so that the council can spearhead the letter.
So I want to go back and clarify, Ms. Zorb, when you brought that up, I don't believe that was a motion. What were you actually, were you making a request?
Well, you're correct. I did not make a specific motion. I needed to hear more clearly from the mayor that she was going to pursue this, or council will take it over, is kind of where I was going with it. I guess if I have her guarantee that it's going to happen, then I will go along the lines of, Ms. DeWald said, the proof is in the pudding. So we'll see if it happens, and I guess mid-year, if it doesn't happen, then we'll take it over then.
Yeah.
How's that?
Okay, at the end.
All right. We will move from legislation then, unless somebody has something else. Okay. We have further remarks from the audience as it pertains to legislation. Anyone? Please state your name and address, please, and speak into the microphone.
Hello, I am LaTanya Chichester, and you said address as well too, right?
Yes, please.
8415 Carroll Avenue. And I've been in North College Hill over, let's see, my daughter started in preschool and she's a senior now at North College Hill. So that I've been here a long time. I know when the council meetings are, the leaf collections, it's on the website whenever my street wasn't paved. And so whenever I needed the Marty or those guys to dump more gravel, I knew who to contact. I knew, to go to the website. I appreciate the idea of a newsletter, but I think we have far more important issues in North College Hill to address than to argue about a newsletter. There was a shooting right outside the high school, and I didn't hear anyone address that.
Mr. President? May
Ms.
I-
DeWald?
That shooting did not involve a student.
No,
was
it did not.
Two people that were not affiliated with the school.
Absolutely not.
The guy that was shot came towards the school property.
I understand that, and the superintendent did an excellent job with the phone blasts and the emails and communicating that with parents, and also communicating with the parents that the students were safe. So that was not my concern. My concern is her community. Things that happen outside of Kroger's, people having purses snatched while grocery shopping, or like I said, different community things, shootings in our communities. Just down the street from me, no, it wasn't technically in North College Hill, but there was a huge big police chase. I'm just saying, safety should be our number one concern and not a newsletter, which I understand. A newsletter informs the residents of leaf collection, our meetings, but what other issues are you going to address in this newsletter?
Ms. Chichester, I am connected to the community as well. I've been here a long, long time. I know a lot
I
of people.
understand. Mm-hmm.
I cannot tell you, because I just came out of my campaign season, how many people, when I knocked on doors, said, "Are we going to get a newsletter?"
Mr. Wall, I worked from home a lot this summer, and no one ever knocked on my door, but maybe two of
I'm
you
sorry, you
guys.
work for who?
I work from home a lot, and I have no one knocking on my door,
Well,
or even my neighbors.
I can't say that I did or did not knock on your door, but I'm
I
telling
can
you.
tell you 100% that was the conversation between my neighbors and I on Halloween.
Me not
But
knocking
I'm
on the
just,
door?
I'm not, no. Let me reset, because I don't want you to feel attacked. That's not my goal
I don't
at
feel
all.
attacked. Thank
My
you.
goal was to just make it known that we have bigger issues than worrying about a newsletter getting put out in our community. I would like for you guys maybe to address the neighbors about things that do happen in the community, because that shooting was a huge thing, and it kind of, not saying it put a black eye, but it marked a smudge or whatever you want to call it on our community, and that's not the community I have.
I agree
That's
with
not the
you.
community I live in, that I walk my dogs in, so
Right, and sadly, the news only wants to cover what goes wrong in
absolutely.
North
So
College
how
Hill.
can we
They don't
talk
wanna
about?
talk about the fall festival that we had that was so productive.
Absolutely. How can we talk about things that can change that perspective? How can
Ms.
we address those things?
Ms. Chichester, so you've made your statement that you think that there are more things that are, there are things that are more important than the newsletter. This is not legislation. That's what we should be addressing at this time, so.
Okay.
I appreciate your comments, but we're going to move on.
Can we talk about what will be in the newsletter when we do come back to this at the next meeting?
We can plan something for the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to old business. Does anyone have any old business? Hearing no old business, we have new business. Anyone have any new business this evening?
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I move to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I'll second.
Motion from Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Zorb to adjourn tonight's meeting. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Mr. Wald,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Blythe,
Yes.
Ms. Brenner.
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.